Hi guys, it's 12:10 in the afternoon. It's still the 13th of December, 2024, and I'll probably either do the zombie or the diary of a griever named John Weaver, both which are me. Earlier this morning, I was trying to get some videos out, and unfortunately, I had some technical difficulties that my computer did not save the files at all. I thought they had, but they didn't. And that was a pain in the ass because I was talking about education. I was talking about how the things I was growing up with, how my own education was compared to kids growing up through these days. There are a couple of lettered academics out there that I probably would need to address the video to, and I don't even know how to get to them, but I'll have to tag them up anyway. Because the people I was encountering on YouTube were reminding me, and I was seeing the results of it through the past 10 years since going over to Antelope Valley College in Lancaster, California, that sometimes their reading skills lack compared to my generation, and I don't even know why they've got generation letters for these things in the first place. List generational gap. They have certain terminologies regarding on how to label us one way or another. Pisses me off that they do that. I have to find out. Oh, this generational gap list. Okay, so in one particular news article on USA Today, and they're going to get me on this one here, but what the hell? I'll get a PDF anyway. I can save this thing. But they called the greatest generation the ones who had fought in World War II. And then there was another date range on that one, and another range on that one. That'd drive me crazy for this damn thing. And I don't even know how to label it. Everyone else has got their own labels for it. I'm not a Gen Zer. Am I a Gen Xer? Am I a Gen W? What kind of Gen am I in the first place? I don't know. Honest to God, I don't know. Millennials, Gen Z, Gen Alpha, Gen whatever the hell it is. Okay, so I'm going over to mentalfloss.com. Get another PDF because I wanted to save the files for this one here too. Because they were talking about the kids, and I call them kids, because to me, they're younger than I am. You're still a kid. You're older than I am. Then I called you an elder. Or an old fart. I am an old fart to myself. But to the kids, they're just kids in diapers still. I don't care if they're 20-year-old or older than that. They're still in diapers. Hey, I'm an old fart and I'm still in diapers. But sometimes when you have biological situations, you have to have one in the first place. Gets that way when you get older. You lose functionality. Of course, it's freaky and driving you crazy on this one here. And why does it happen to deal with the things I was dealing with? Well, why not? Looking at one particular image that just popped up over here, and I'm doing a Yahoo search for it, just getting a little image of the thing so I can just look at it. Okay, so let's say, shit, it's going to be that way a minute. Uh, let's see, if we are talking about, give me back any other one. I'm lost. Lost, I tell you, lost. Baby boomers were from 1946 through 1964. I missed out about a few years on that one. Otherwise, I would have been called a boomer. Instead, I'm called Generation X. Cross out with the T slanted on each other. So I'm a Jed slanted. You're born between 1965 and 1980. Basically, you're between the ages of 44 and 59 years old. How dare you, you young gated whippersnappers? That's what I gotta say about you anyway. So basically, the ones who are Gen Zers who were born in the time of 1997 through 2012 would have been 12 to 27-year-olds. These professors on YouTube are having an issue with them. And they're scratching their heads on how to deal with the education that they have been getting. It seems that in the time of baby boomers, we didn't have to struggle with the testing, apparently, according to them, in one way or another. And we had to function on if the quality of the education was there or not, even though we did have discrepancies happening because of, I should say, racial discrimination in one form or another, or discrimination in another form or another. But pushing that aside, my education was dealing with phonics as the people I was looking at were talking about. So I'll use the terminology for them. Sorry, allergies. There's a gentleman named Jared Henderson and a lady named Shelly Swearingen. I think it's the pronunciation for him. Both of them were talking about, and both of them are probably lettered academic, about the nature of reading comprehension, reading in particular, duration, endurance. How well can they read? Do they understand what they're reading? Now, when I was going through the second round of college in Antelope Valley, I had already been through classes decades earlier. I thought I had some adequate writing skills, but I didn't. Not that much anyway. I'm going to sound for collegiate. For business writing, yes, no problem. I could do well in business companies, and I've done so. But in Leonard Academic, there are certain forms and functions that you have to learn and how to put information correctly to them to present your ideas. And they may not be, it may not be in a form or fashion that audiences can understand, or actually the general public can understand, unless they've already been through their own high school education on how to write an essay. When you write an essay, you get a thesis statement, you get an idea statement. You got to back it up with a paragraph on that one. But then the work comes when you have to back it up with a lot of information, and therefore you got your pages and pages full of pros, cons, if you're supporting each other, or just listing the facts. Conclusion, and then works cited, or bibliography as you call it. Writing is one thing. Reading books. I'm hearing it from a couple of professors who've come across stories, but also their own personal observations that people are having problems comprehending a damn book. I grew up with a book in my hand, almost. When I was taught phonics and how to read, I was given books, children's books, get you started, little limericks, little rhymes, little stories of, seems like fairy tale, but it was something to get you going on. Stuart Little, Winnie the Pooh, Charlotte's Web, little kiddies book. Gothic fairy tales, So I was reading some of those books as a younger age. And when I got older, I graduated into, well, besides comic books, into science books, into fiction. I was reading about stuff of submarines, of tin cans in space, or under the water, or helicopters that fly in the sky. When it came down for learning about things around me, that's a different story altogether. And yes, I had to read the textbooks, outdated as they may be, and I don't care. There was still material we still had to read in the first place. Biology books, science fiction. Math was its own little situation, some numbers and figuring and calculations, and my brain was like, huh? Engineering skills. Well, Lego building, that was it. And getting out into the real world, I had to learn the basic mathematics could get me to a point regarding cashiering, as long as my math skills were more than adequate. Not so quite. Struggle as I could, but I still did it anyway. I got for calculators. I knew how to use a calculator, but I also knew how to read and and understand comprehension. Look beyond the words. Look for in between the lines what they're talking about. Comprehensive, you know, critical thinking skills. And unfortunately, it seems like these kids going into Ivy Leagues or even the state universities are having problems concerned about critical thinking. In the last 10 years or 11 years, going into the college, okay, about 10 years, I think, I kept coming across in the English classes that there still was remedial teaching concerning about how to use grammar skills. Be critical thinking in anything and everything. When we're doing English literature, we're teaching about how to do a sentence structure as well. But you had to have English 101. English 101 was the basic of everything. If you couldn't get there, you had to get your skills up to that level because everything depended upon English 101 skills. Critical thinking and literature in a class meant you had to know how to do a sentence structure. You had to know how to tear things apart in your head. When you're looking at books, what are they trying to tell you? Fictional and otherwise. Scientific are basically bread and butter or plain toast. But as long as you got the idea of what the gist are talking about, okay, fine. But fictional writing? That's a different thing altogether. Reading someone else's work and trying to understand what they're talking about, especially if you're in high school or actually in the higher educational curriculums, that they want you to tear apart these books to see what they're talking about and does it help you in your essay in order to present it to the professor. Are their writing skills up to par? And do they actually understand what they're talking about? Because I know there was a few books I never came across. I've heard about them so many years, but I never came across them. Only because I never had a desire for it in the first place. Huckleberry Finn was one of them. Street called Desire. I've heard about the play, never read the book until I read the play. Then I'm like, ooh. And then there was Zoot Suit. I heard about that one in the 70s. Heard about the play. I really didn't think about it in the first place. It was a historical play in a musical, but it was so cool. It was cool to read about it, and it was even better when I actually saw some of it on screen to give me a better understanding about it. I'm like, wow. We didn't do that back in the 80s because we didn't have the digital technology back then. We didn't have the digital technology back in the 80s or 70s. We had VHS, and it was still developing out there. We had the camera reels. We'd be able to watch World at War. Or maybe something about the human body. So many documentaries that we would see on public broadcasting stations. PBS. We would see some things on there, but we would see it in class, what they were talking about. Sometimes it made like, ugh, and other times it's like, wow. That's what we're dealing with. Back then in my days, we were just getting the computer networks up and running. We were getting chat boards. We didn't have the smartphones. Last 30 years, we're getting more and more phones coming out there. You're texting like crazy, and it costs you like a damn device. No wonder people are running into things left and right. We're not paying attention to it. They're only paying attention to the little dots and the zeros and ones in the damn thing. The character formats in the thing. Why did everyone stop reading? A couple of articles I was watching on YouTube. What is it with the kids that can't even read in the first place? They don't even have the endurance to read it. Even a simple children's book, maybe about 5 or 10 pages, they couldn't even read that damn crap. How about if they happen to go into Bible study? That'll throw them off. Little catchphrases people will use, but have they actually read the entire passage, not just a verse or two or a line or two, to understand the context of the damn thing? My God, that requires brain power! But no, what their contention is the school systems, districts, and states were focused on testing. Focusing on how well the students would do on the Scantrons, or whatever kind of format they're using these days. Yeah, I did bubbles. Get me a pencil, and get me a line-up sheet with little tiny bubbles I'm supposed to. But make sure I understand the damn question I'm looking right next to me. Do I understand what they're talking about? Even a word problem for mathematics will throw me off. I never did like math, but it was there. You had to be comprehending what they were talking about in there. But then again, if they were talking about something else, well, maybe you can figure the thing out. History courses still required reading comprehension on how those events are affecting and relating to us today. That's why I kept screaming on my YouTube channel, history, history, history. And I have she who must be obeyed. Hold on. I know, Ma, I know. You gonna fuss? Come on. I'm not cranky. She who must be obeyed. You alright? Walking around a bit. Walking around a bit. Caregiver to an elderly dog. Family. Do a lot of things for family. But do I do a lot of things for comprehension of our reading? Now, because we got digital, because we got into computer screens, both on laptops, mainframes, doesn't matter what it is, an old CRT to the digital, to the newest inventions that they got for the screens. Don't ask me about it. I have lost track of time and space and computer technology going well beyond me at this point. If it wasn't on a cathode ray tube, I wouldn't even know how to tell you what it was. But I got these flat screens that have sharper visuals, and sometimes, it's fun dealing with a laptop that I can actually move around with a finger. A larger version to the quote-unquote smartphone that steals everything out of you. Rhyme, reason, and everything. including how to think, how to remember, how to write things down in little books that you have to keep with you left and right, including about phone books. No, keep everything in its digital format, zeros and ones, because it's convenient. We had to use our brains more and more instead of leaving them to the zeros and ones. We called them smart because they were getting smart and we're getting dumber. So it's no wonder the new generation that we have coming up, the Generation Alpha, are going to be growing up to where they're going to have more than just having a phone in your hand. They're going to be wearing it on their glasses or anything else. We already foresaw this, the writers, the dreamers, the creators, long time ago. We put it in digital. We put it in analog format. Cartoons, television shows, movies, books, comic books. The print and old-time visuals. We're talking about dystopia visions. We're talking about technomancy. We're talking about cyberpunk. Growing up, I never heard about cyberpunk, but it was just coming out. Well, we are technologically hooked up. Well, yeah, like the Star Trek, the Borg, Next Generation. We see people who are actually no longer people, but they're androids. We already had that terminology decades earlier. So, yes, growing up in the science fiction and literature world, some things were rolling around in my head and still stick in there. Points that we're dealing with, people's attitudes, government systems, exploration of space and also of the inner mind and soul, of worlds beyond and worlds within. We had forces of energies being manipulated either by technomancy, or we're dealing with technomages, or we're dealing with sticks or objects of devices that emanated energy out of them, or let alone the fingertips or whatever we're using at this point. All these creative stuff and more. Flights of fancy, even building Lego ships and you fly them around in your head while you're manipulating them right above you in your hands. Did it help with reading comprehension? It helped out with imagination, but imagination is also part of comprehension. And it's also part of reading because we would have to read the material to see what the hell they're talking about. My generation was talking about that all the time. One way or another, we're doing it back and forth. But in this format we're dealing with right now, it's only one way. As print paper would be, information is put into a format, into a mechanism where we're supposed to be picking it up somehow, looking at it, and trying to figure out does it make sense or not. Do we have a Rosetta Stone? Were we born with a Rosetta Stone? Did we actually learn about a Rosetta Stone in one form or fashion? Do these students understand that the older generation who lived before the computer screens knew what the hell they were talking about? And it's no wonder the older generation, looking at the kids who are stuck with the screens, no wonder we're shaking our heads, because reading to us in the books was one format that we all recognized. We all lived for decades, for millennium, centuries or millenniums, however you want to look at it. The printed word when it came out, and printed text on stone tablets, in pieces of metal, in fabric, in papyrus. And when we switched over to the zeros and ones, to the algorithmic, situated on magnetic resonance, and magnetic energy bonds, holding that information suspended. Suspended even on drives like this magnetically in here. This in itself could hold tons of information. I could hold up information about the Alexandria Library contents if necessary. Our technology has gone to this point where everything is loaded on us. 512 gigabytes. That's a lot. That's about half a terabyte. And terabyte's pretty damn big for me. Gigabyte is just like dealing with a kilobyte. Or a megabyte. A little larger. But this is what we're dealing with. Now, reading comprehension. Why? That's the computer again. What do we have a problem with it? I would ask these professors if I could reach them. If I could put them up on my page and send it out to the world. Maybe send it out on Twitter. If they're out there, I could try finding them there. And then posting this link over to them. And ask them a question. Why did everybody stop reading? Look around. I would also say, look back in the past. I'll say it 3 times. History, history, history. We're repeating mistakes with the new things we have. We never learned the patterns. Always the generational gap that we have between the new generation and the older generation. That we're trying to find a Rosetta Stone that each generation can understand. It's taken me this long to figure this stuff out. I wasn't listening very much back then. But, everyone else learned better, so we had to. They had discovered in different forms and formats, and they increased their advantages over me. I guess I was one of the slower ones. While everyone was playing on a field, I was reading a damn book, pissing off people. Whenever I went to different places, I always carried a book with me. The paperback, even if it was science fiction literature. Could have been of a genre I was reading. Could have been of a specific story regarding a genre or characters. I don't know what the hell they were talking about. But it was something. And because I liked science and science fiction, I didn't think it would be connected to philosophy or critical thinking skills. I kept watching The Twilight Zone over and over again because I thought it was fascinating when I was a young kid and didn't figure a damn thing out until I got older, mature, and it started hitting my head on the damn tables. I'm like, why didn't I figure that out a long time ago? Why didn't I think of it? Because I wasn't there yet. You got to understand, whatever forms and formats they're looking at these days, yes, the book is important, but unfortunately we got the zeros and ones outclassing, outdating, and outmatching literature. Yes, they are swamped with information. They are overwhelmed with too much information in their heads. They might as well have computer chips implanted to absorb that much data and keep it going. But would they be able to communicate effectively enough? We're wondering whether or not we're pushing these kids too damn hard to read a damn book. A book may have about 10,000 pages in it. Or not 10,000 pages, 10,000 words in it. Did you ever try having a student write out a story? Not about a 3, 5, or 10 pager. I'm talking about a 25, 30, 50 page. Or 100 to 300 to 500 pages. Some authors have taken years or decades, slowly or rapidly, if they're able to, come up with a series. Come up with a series, maybe about 300 or 400 pages each section. How long will it take to do a rough draft? And how many edits do they need to do on it? What's their time limit on it? The thing that they should have been pushing them on there in this school, in the educational system, is can they do this? We're not talking about just a general essay of giving a thesis statement. I'm talking about stretching their brain cells at this point, and whether or not if they can stretch their brain cells. We know if they're given computer technology, they can create visualizations like crazy or play visualizations like crazy. But can they actually put digits, zeros and ones, into a format where we can actually read it? And we've got examples of it for decades, ever since we had the cathode ray tube. We're reading it. We're reading online papers. We're reading online newspapers from journalists. Well, how about creative stories that we're seeing? Hello, we're doing it. So maybe it's the professors are still having the technological gap at this point and still trying to find the Rosetta Stone necessary. Because walking into campuses of a brick and mortar is a hell of a lot different than doing online. Brick and mortar, we were used to. In my generation and older, we were used to it. Walking into a campus like that. Going to the classes, setting our asses down, grabbing a piece of paper and a pencil, and then taking notes like crazy. And praying that the pencil doesn't break. Or let alone if we still had enough Mercer Mate pens with us. Maybe even had our digital recorder. Recording. That would have been something. These days we have to get permission to doing a video. We'd have to ask a professor, do you mind if I videotape this for my own record at this point? And some of the professors would actually have their own podcasts that we would actually download and watch. But it'll have our voices on there naturally in the class. So maybe some of the professors are still having a problem with this because maybe the school systems, yes, they are trying to see whether or not they're going to be intelligent enough. But the professors still need to see whether or not these guys actually have the comprehension to do so and understand what the material that they're talking about. Yes, we have information overload with the computer screens all the time. We are addicted to these damn things. Even I am. I'm a total geek and a total addict on the damn thing. I can't live without the damn thing. Ever since, 10 years or more than that, when it came out with it, and I was so fascinated with maneuvering things around a computer screen over here. But hell, I had to learn about the computers back in the 80s when it came out with it. When he actually had Pong coming out there, I was a kid mesmerized with Pong. They actually had computing machines prior to that. World War II, they were messing around with them. Even some of the ancient days they were talking about computers. If I'm not mistaken, there was talking about that in the ancient text of the great Library of Alexandria, giving a little tidbits here and there concerning about robots and computers. Even ancient Chinese were developing basics of computer blocks. It was coming. It was coming. We're here. We're in it. We're overwhelmed by it. We've got AI. Oh, God. We talked about AI for decades on this one. Terrified about our own creation coming out there to kill us. Help us, kill us, mutate us. Cyberpunk. Asimov was writing books about this stuff. Him and his foundation. And those who have written books after Asimov's died wrote more about the foundation in different terminology, in different forms. He was also writing about how robots should be behaving, the three laws of robotics. Yes, I can hear some professors screaming and yelling, "He's getting it!" I had it a long time ago. Just had to put the pieces together, and it took me time. Time, patience, maturity, experiences, growth. We're dealing with 18, 19-year-olds, or earlier than that, who are stuck with the computer screen with a hell of a lot of word salad going through the damn stuff into their brains, through their eyes. Imagine if we actually had it implanted, or actually we could touch the device and we can get the information through the nerve ends into the brain faster. Eesh! To do that, we need to have an interface into us. We already talked about it a long time ago. But the kids, unless they were aware of it, read about it, they think it's all new. Every generation thinks it's all new, but it's slowly been developing throughout time. Again, history, history, history! I wanted to be an English major. Still do. I can't stand politics because it's gotten uglier and uglier. History, I wish I was a history buff back then, but again, I guess indirectly, I was a history buff. Learning too many things at different rates. I'm plugging it all together. And sometimes I think Rod Serling's with me saying, "Yes, he actually gets it! He's out of the Twilight Zone! And now he's in his own Twilight Zone. Oh no!" Well, reinvent the Twilight Zone all over again. Redesigning it. Because boys and girls, we never left it.